Additive manufacturing is technology turning manufacturing on its head. It's a smarter, faster way to produce, perfect for a small, ultra-efficient Singapore. Additive manufacturing in Singapore is spearheading industries like biomedical, design and building construction, precision engineering, electronics, aerospace and marine offshore, as well as clean technology.
What we're working on is developing new materials, new ways of printing, and designing these materials to suit your body part, and then training the doctors to put them back into your body.
EM can be used to make injection molds with conformal cooling channels, as well as low-volume customized jigs and fixtures.
We have already seen door brackets which has been 3D printed and have been used in the aeroplanes. We will also see fuel nozzles that will be used in the aircraft engines.
So an exciting development is development of hybrid technologies. This is a combination of both additive and subtractive-based technologies, such as milling. Solar panel and wind turbine are some of the emerging applications with EM in the clean technology sector. The water membrane is another very exciting area that's coming through. Additive manufacturing is a huge area of growth for the future, along with robotics and automation. In Budget 2016, the government announced the Industry Transformation Program. Additive manufacturing, automation, sensors, analytics, these will be the enablers.
AM is identified as a disruptive technology. It has the power to impact lives, businesses, and global economy. It is a game changer. The current market size is about 7 billion, and we should see this number triple by the year 2020 to 21 billion.
The AM ecosystem, as we see it, is made out of three main parts. Universities that are training students for working in the 3D industries and do research, in corporations that do prototyping work, actual parts, and scale-down model to train people, and individuals that take advantage of the fact that 3D can do small quantity productions.
It's critical selecting the right applications that are technically feasible and economically viable, then having a workforce that is able to collaborate and innovate to create the new applications and solve the challenges.
We want to help companies translate their technologies into viable commercial solutions. We do this by partnerships, seeding capabilities, and skills training to position them well into the next industrial revolution. If you are interested to know more about AM and the new wave that's coming, come talk to us today.
In the future economy, the strongest businesses are built with invisible bricks. Intangible assets are key to business success and unlocking opportunities across the globe. At IPOS International, we'll pave the way for your intangible assets to take you further. With Singapore as a gateway for innovation flows through ASEAN and beyond, we'll connect you with our international networks and ecosystem partners to forge strong partnerships built to last. We'll partner you in maximizing the value of your intangible assets to drive enterprise growth through holistic strategies aligned with your business goals. Get ahead by sharpening your perspectives to lay a solid foundation for harnessing your intangible assets into the future. Fuel your foresight with multifaceted, actionable industry insights that propel you to the next level. Wherever you are on your innovation journey, we'll take you to where you want to be. IPOS International, bridging possibilities.
Marks & Clark Singapore is a leading firm of registered patent and trademark attorneys that celebrates its 25th anniversary in 2020. Having opened our Singapore office myself in 1995, our team has grown and matured over the years. Located in the heart of the central business district, we are currently headed by 8 partners who are qualified in Singapore, as well as in Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and under the EPC. Together, we possess a broad range of technical expertise and comprehensive experience in intellectual property law. Our large team of 24 professional staff provides us with a broad range of specialisms, meaning we can advise on all kinds of technology, from electronics to biochemistry and materials. We have been ranked as the Singapore Prosecution Firm of the Year by Managing Intellectual Property for 5 out of the past 6 years, including most recently in 2019. We have also been consistently listed in the top tier of the Asia Legal Business IP rankings and the IAM Patent 1000 rankings. In the IAM rankings, our firm has the highest number of ranked individuals on the Singapore list. This is testament to the hard work, dedication, and professionalism displayed by our team in our relations with our clients and colleagues. Through our strong network of Asian offices, which include Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and Hong Kong and Beijing, and through our strong links with associated firms in the Southeast Asian region, we can effectively manage and execute filing programs across the whole region and further afield. Our Singapore team is experienced with handling filings in major ASEAN member countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Having filed for clients in these jurisdictions, we are familiar with each jurisdiction, and we are able to provide a range of intellectual property services in these countries to our clients. We act for a diverse range of clients, from sole inventors and SMEs, all the way through to government research organizations and multinational companies, and we provide a bespoke personal service for everyone. If you wish to find out more about how Arnott & Clark Singapore can assist you to protect, harness, and leverage on your intellectual property, please do not hesitate to contact us. From helping you with patent and trademark registrations to providing you with a comprehensive global IP strategy, our technical expertise and commercial understanding means you will get the best possible advice to realize your IP and business goals.
This is your home. This is your life as the world turns. Everywhere and always, there is movement, a pulse. Every day, we're all a part of this. Things, big and small, they all matter. And through changes and collaboration, things transform, grow, and develop into the future. This is why we exist, to connect people through sustainable global trade, and to connect you with whatever it is that you need. Shaping your life, your business, and your future. We are there, providing you with the tools, making sure that you create value. Because we are Williamson, and we are a part of your life.
A very good afternoon, everyone, from here, sunny Singapore. Yes, it's really sunny. It hasn't been raining as much recently, so the sun is really out. My name is Mahendran Reddy. I'm the head of ecosystem at the National Additive Manufacturing Innovation Cluster, NAMIC. Thank you very much for taking your time to connect with us this afternoon. And NAMIC is really proud to be co-organizing this webinar with the Intellectual Property Office Singapore, IPOS International, as the first in a regular series that we will be organizing covering various topics relevant to the AM industry. So to kick off our webinar series this year, we will be going into the nitty-gritty of identifying and mitigating intellectual properties risks within industrial 3D printing. It will be a 1.5 hour long session, and the agenda is as follows. We will first begin the session with opening remarks from Dr. Ho Chow Sing, Managing Director of NAMIC. Next up, we will have Mr. Ruben Lin, Head of Strategic Engagement of IPOS International. He will be elaborating on what an intangible asset is. We will then hear from Ms. Lucille Ong, Senior Associate from Marks & Clerk Singapore, with a presentation on patent claims and infringement, an overview with case studies in the spare parts industry. And lastly, Mr. Hakon Elkia, Head of Venture of Williamson's Ship Service, will be sharing with us on maritime intelligence, how to mitigate risk and their IP value proposition, and on their 3D printing venture with ThyssenKrupp. We will then adjourn to a 30 minutes panel discussion with our distinguished speakers, where we will take your burning questions. So please start posting your questions already if you have them in mind, using the question and answer tab right at the bottom of your screen. So, intellectual property. This is indeed an intriguing topic for all of us. We've always been confronted with this, and the issue of IP has always been a contentious one as well. First of all, there's definitely two sides to a coin, right? So one, how do we protect our IP rights? Secondly, how do we ensure that we do not unintentionally violate the IP rights of others when 3D printing? I'm sure these questions have come to your mind at least once, and for many of us in the industry, it has, especially here in Singapore, where AM is pretty much largely used in the aerospace and maritime sectors, where spare parts replacement is one of the common functions of 3D printing due to its ability to be printed on demand. This reduces inventory costs and safeguards against parts obsolescence, as tooling is not needed for fabrication. However, one of the major concerns that we have today in spare parts printing is the possibility of violating intellectual property rights. With those thoughts in mind, let's dive straight into it and have our industry experts take the stage to tell us more about IP rights in 3D printing. But first of all, we will first kick off the webinar with an opening remarks by Dr. Ho Cho Sing, Managing Director of NAMIC. Those of us familiar with NAMIC would know that NAMIC is a Singapore government platform initiative which catalyzes innovation and scales industrial adoption of digital additive manufacturing technologies. Since our inception, since late 2015, NAMIC has raised several millions in public-private funding to support various AM initiatives across several industry sectors. Before joining the public sector, Cho Sing had spent several years with HP Singapore and Chartered Semiconductor, where he undertook various executive roles in technology product development, as well as business and supply chain operations. He's an advocate for 3D printing, and with a belief in the role of technology for the betterment of humanity, Cho Sing has a passion for nurturing deep tech startups, and he has spoken at numerous forums. Without further ado, here's Cho Sing. Cho Sing, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Mahendran. A very warm welcome to all of you. And first and foremost, I want to thank our distinguished speakers from the industry, from iPorts International, from Marks & Clerk, and of course, from Wilhelmsen Ship Services. The novel coronavirus, COVID-19, is having a tremendous impact on our world at the present time, and it's accelerated a lot of the digital transformation that we're seeing. At a time when the global supply chains and large-scale manufacturing are being revealed as fragile and vulnerable, the role played by digital fabrication technologies and local ecosystems give us a glimpse into a future in which new forms of self-sufficient production can empower communities all across the world. Now, we define self-sufficient production as producing locally while connecting globally. We've seen how advances in digital fabrication, of which 3D printing technologies belongs to that, have enabled global connected local production ecosystems to design and deliver life-saving products. Global connectivity enables the open sharing of product designs, the identification of raw materials, as well as innovative approaches for aligning designs with safety standards. Meanwhile, the local digital fabrication capabilities have enabled the production and delivery of several critical products that was at one point in time in short supply without the dependencies on traditional global supply chains. Now, Industry 4.0 is transforming the way companies manufacture. Like other industries, the manufacturing sector is going through the digitalization of assets and processes. So to some extent, the future is now. We need to start thinking about how do we actually enable a secure digital threat. To really capitalize on the benefits of this digitalization, an enormous volume of data needs to be managed, controlled, and tracked as it moves through the digital supply chain. Implementation of decentralized manufacturing models with ability to manufacture at the place and time of need can only happen if the right data gets to the right machines at the right time, following a tightly controlled and secure process. The integrity of both digital and physical supply chains is critical to prevent an overflow of counterfeits, maliciously modified, poor quality, or uncertified parts from going to market. Technology that protects data at rest, manages the data flow through licensing, and keeps inalterable records of movements, like those from several companies that are now in the market provides data security and traceability. And this will go a long way to enable the secure deployment of these new manufacturing business models. Now today, well, we're not going to talk about the software platforms that essentially enable some of these security, but we'll first take a step back and look at some of the ideas and concepts and the context why this is important. And hopefully through this conversation, we'll be able to share more about some of the existing work that's already happened. In this case, we're very fortunate to have Hakon, who is the head of ventures from Wilhelmsen Ship Services. He has worked with us for a couple of years. We also have Lucille Ong, who has been in conversation with us on this topic actually as far back as I can remember since we were incepted. And of course, we're very fortunate to have IPOS International, which is a national government initiative that basically looks at IP and security issues. And with that, let me just wish all of you a very fruitful afternoon and join the webinar and do pose questions throughout the session later. Over back to you, Mahendran.
All right. Thank you, Chosing. Thanks so much. So our speakers are all ready and a little introduction has been done. A little bit more about them. So our very first speaker is all set. Let's welcome Mr. Ruben Lin. He's the head of strategic engagement of IPOS International to share more about intellectual property. He works in the expertise and enterprise engagement arm of Intellectual Property Office of Singapore. With over 14 years of experience in business development, Ruben has empowered both large enterprises and SMEs in uncovering valuable revenue and growth opportunities through active business partnering. Ruben graduated from the Singapore Management University in Business Management with a magna cum laude. Currently, he's pursuing a graduate diploma in IP Management and Innovations Management at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. With extensive knowledge in IP from his work and studies, I'm really looking forward to Ruben sharing his thoughts and insights with us, and I'm sure you are excited as well. So Ruben, over to you. Let's hear it from you.
Thank you, Mahendra. Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. Now, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and just a very big thank you to NAMIC for inviting me for this session, and I look forward to share more with our fellow panelists. Now, without further ado, let me just jump right straight into this. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I do have prepared, bear with me because in the course of the deck of slides, I have prepared a lot of content and they are meant for distribution later so that you can have a copy of them going forward. But in view of the limited time, I'd like to take you through some of the key things that I'd like to share with you today. Now, first and foremost, I'll just keep this very brief. IPOS International is the subsidiary of IPOS, the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore, and we are the enterprise engagement arm. Now, let me just go straight into this. What are intangible assets? I would like to start off with this picture or rather this host of pictures that you look at it, and this is not a common way to start a webinar. But I would like to draw your attention to this because most of us will understand the conventional way of looking at a vending machine, which is the one on the right, where you put the coins in, and then you just press whatever you want and it comes out. Vending machine technology as a business itself has actually evolved a lot over the years. As you can see right now on those on my left, you will have actually see that there's ice cream, there's orange juice, there's salmon, there's even cooked food, there's crabs and pizzas. And the machine has taken so much evolve, has control of evolution, and that's actually pretty much a mirror, a parallel to in this case, similar to additive manufacturing. Why am I talking about intangible assets here? It's because all these things would not be possible without applying various intangible assets and apply into these regular boxes that you see right there. Traditionally, what you have is your typical mechanism where you put money and things comes out. But over time, as you can see, that in order for them to compete, they need to start to acquire different forms of intangible assets. They need to acquire different forms of technology. So if I want to sell orange juice, I must be able to keep it cold, keep it fresh, able to extract the juice, able to seal it, and things like so on and so forth. Similarly for hot food, similarly for salmon. And with that in mind, it is the possibility of incorporating various intangible assets from different fields. Again, that's a lot of parallel to additive manufacturing, where additive manufacturing is actually an enabler, where you will then be working with people from different industry, adding value to their line of work, which in this case, many people has added value to the line of work into these machines to get to where they are. Now, before I move to the next one, interesting, I want to highlight this is that, and that would have pretty much summarized what is that intangible asset in terms of the application, in terms of putting different things together. There are two more that I'd like to highlight that intangible asset that you may not notice that actually make a very big difference in this industry. One of them is actually your payment gateway. Because before that, you can only accept coins, and now you can actually do PayWave, you can actually accept an EasyLink card. And that itself has made it so convenient for people to purchase. More importantly, another intangible asset that you have over there is actually your position, your location. Because bearing in mind that you do need power supply to power these things up. The moment you have one machine there, it is not possible to have another machine already. So, and it's these intangible assets that you do not usually notice that gives you that competitive advantage that set your business apart. And that could be a lot of parallel drawn to additive manufacturing. So in brief, what exactly are intangible assets? And what you see over here is that we have summarized them into two categories. So these are non-exhaustive, but nevertheless, we break them into two categories of registrables and non-registrables. And for those that are registrables, then there are some things like what we call intellectual property, IP. And after you register, it gave birth to your IP rights. So namely, you have patent, trademark, designs, or in US, you call it design patents. And then you also have domain names, which is your triple W dots. And then when it comes to the non-registrable, and that's where the games gets even more interesting, because then you have a lot of things like your know-how, your trade secrets, and I'm sure everyone here has trade secrets. Data is a new goal, you know, and as you interact more with your client, the more data that you gather is able to, and as you analyze those data, it actually allows you to improve your offering, improves your services. Okay, so this is actually just a screenshot of what are some of the intangible assets, and every one of you have them. And in order to, and if I were to take a step back, every successful product has a whole slew of intangible assets put together. In essence, intangible asset is if I were to paraphrase it in a very simple term, all your intangible asset is really just the manifestation of all your creation and all your ideas. And as you manifest it, it has to take a certain form. And one of the form, it could take the form of trademark, it could take the form of data, it could take the form of patent, it could take the form of trade secret, and so on and so forth. But no matter what form they take, it all comes together to give you the success that you desire in your business. But it's important to identify the form that it takes so that you can administer the right treatment to it. So why is IA management crucial? This is especially so for additive manufacturing. I took this chart from an article in August 2019 from the 3D natives. And as all the videos that we saw earlier, and as what has been shared previously as well by the opening remark, 3D manufacturing is really an enabler, but as it cut across various industries. And as you cut across so many different industries, you then have to work with a lot of different partners. And if I were to replicate them all in a very simple web, you know, you have 4 to 5 or 6 different key industries. And I'm sure everyone here in the audience today are actually in one of those different industries, or you may even be in a few of them. And while you are participating in those industries, you come from a different segment of the value chain. Some of you could be service providers where you actually have the manufacturing solutions, or you could be advisory. You can also be developing softwares. You could be looking at the materials, or you can even be a system manufacturer. And then another layer down between the interaction between a value chain and key industry is the way you engage. You know, because so you will be engaging with various universities for research collaboration. You could, or even licensing their technology. You could be working with distributors. You could be looking for investors. And it's this whole myriad of relationships that you're going to have that is where intangible comes in very, very important, because you need to identify what are those assets that you really have, that you own, and that can help you to achieve what you want to achieve in this whole different relationship that you're going to get yourself into. And intangible assets happen no matter what value chain that you fall within. In the line of your work, there will always be upstream and downstream. From the time that you create and you produce your offering and your ideas, all the way down to when it comes to when you generate your revenue. And then you review the whole business model, and then you ask yourself, whether do I want to improve on my new product, or you want to come up with new service offering. And it's this whole business cycle that you're constantly developing and creating new intangible assets, even things like your relationships, your network, your trade secrets. Okay, and this, I'll just leave this here quickly just to share with you that there are many ways to expand your business, and with different modes of expansion that you choose, especially when you go to overseas, it will always involve an IP arrangement. And that's because you are actually offering your solution, your services. Now, I can't leave without sharing some practical tips. So this is just one chart that I have with you to just to give you a quick illustration on how easy or how hard is it to obtain certain protection for certain IP and kind of like the duration. I will leave this slide with you as well, and this is just to give you a quick overview on how exactly you can actually, how much it costs to file for a patent and how much it costs to file for a trademark, and what are some of the things to take note of. And I'm sure this one, Lucy will be able to cover more later on. Now, more importantly is no matter what business, no matter what intangible assets and IP that you have and you're going to create, and the kind of treatment that you want to administer, it has to align to your business objectives. And that is very important because you need your IA to work for you. It's just that if you're gonna come up with a new material, you want the material to work for you. And therefore, for the material to work for you, then you need to find out how am I going to protect it, and how am I going to sell it, how am I going to distribute it. And there are many, many ways that I shared earlier. And in different, and as the form that it takes, whether it's a form of trade secret, the form of patents, in the form of trademark, you need to understand how one can actually treat it with as you interact, as you engage with other people. Some of those things that are highlighted in bold and underlined are some of the things that would usually require more attention to. Okay, so under patterns, that's one part that I highlighted under signaling, because some of you, some of our audience here today could be in the startups stage at this moment, and you're actually looking for funding. So a lot of your VCs could be saying, hey guys, do you have any patents to protect yourself and things like that. So sometimes some companies I do know actually file patents for signaling purpose. See, so at the end of the day, it has to align to your business objective. You need to know why you're doing certain things. This is an age-old question. This is a very old and long debate that everybody has. So all of us have trade secrets. Should I continue to keep it as a trade secret, or should I file for a patent? And I'm sure all of us have different ways of assessing this question. But I guess just to leave 3 quick tips as to whether you should continue this, I will share that. I will say that basically, before you file for a patent, do you really know why you need a patent? And does that patent fulfill a certain business objective? Secondly, should you decide to file for a patent, you've got to ask yourself whether is it easy to work around it? Because if it's going to be very easy for someone to look at your patent information and then bypass it, then it may not be a very strong patent. And last but not least, you could ask yourself whether is it easily detectable? Because if you're going to file for a patent, but yet you're not able to find out that people are actually infringing on you, then again, how strong, or rather how much of a patent protection are you getting out of which? But of course, these are just some of the very quick guides for you to draw the assessment. I will leave this slide with you as well, and these are just basically some of the ways that you can look at to protect your confidential information. This is some of the basic contracts that usually where IP will appear. Last but not least, I'll leave this 4 points with you in view of time. These are some of the 4 key points that you have there. I would like to quickly take you through some of the resources that we have at IPOS International that we want to share with the companies out there. Again, this would be some of the ways that you will want to look at how to take on this schemes that we have. You would like to file for a patent and trademark. And should you have, and these are a couple of ways that IPOS supporting. We actually have a legal clinic. So if you do have any concerns on that, someone you got a letter that you may be under certain litigation, then we do have a complimentary first-time IP clinic that you may want to tap on for that purpose. We also have we are also promoting alternative dispute resolution to encourage companies when they get in a dispute, how they can actually work towards mediating instead of going towards litigation. These are some of the training programs that we have. You have that in your slides later. We do have an advisory program that you can also take a look. Feel free to find out more from me if you are interested. Last but not least, I strongly encourage everyone to download this guide. These are our free guides, and there are 15 of them. And these guides are very, very detailed, and they will share with you tips and with checklists on different circumstances that you may face on how to deal with your IP along the way. And we do also provide complimentary IP chat, so that if you find out that it's something that I shared earlier that you feel that, hey, I would like to know more, and I do have some questions, feel free to connect with me, and I'm happy to have a word with you one-on-one, and so that we can share more that's pertaining to your business. All right, last but not least, allow me to leave with you a video, and this video is actually taken from one of the business guide that we have.
Innovation is becoming increasingly collaborative, especially for companies with a limited size, reach, or expertise. Working with partners is essential for commercial success. You can propose new ideas, combine technology expertise, and pool intellectual property rights to launch your product or service more quickly. Say you created the formula for pizza dough, which can expand to 20 times its original size. You partner an oven maker who can fire bake this in 2 minutes flat, and a chef with a secret sauce guaranteed to tickle your taste buds. Recipe for success? Maybe not. Collaborations often complicate the situation. Here are some questions you must ask before starting collaboration. Who brings what to the collaboration exactly? What about the rights of IP generated together? When can they be used? During the collaboration? How about after your collaboration ends? Where in the world will they be protected? Why should you work with these partners? How can you protect the IP that you are bringing into the collaboration? Which, by the way, is called background IP. There's also foreground IP or resulting IP, the rights developed during the collaboration by any of the parties, and side ground IP, any other IP developed that isn't part of the project scope. This is important because parties cannot license or assign joint IP from the collaboration unless the other parties agree. So collaboration isn't as straightforward as it seems. Here's a simple illustration that may help. Have you done a stock take of all your intangible assets? Make sure you know what IP rights belong to you and are recorded in collaboration agreements from the start. How will you divide up the ownership rights of shared IP? Can you use them after the project ends? Make sure you define ownership and permitted usage of IP rights for both foreground and background IP from the start. Side ground IP. Make sure there is no confusion with background or foreground IP. Include a clause that parties must seek the right to use such side ground IP directly in writing from the owner. When developing IP, you'll need agreements to control what can or cannot be done with your property in each market sector. IP can be sold or licensed. You may want to assign or transfer some of your IP rights, for a price of course. Negotiating a license can result in a very successful commercial relationship for both parties. By licensing, you grant permission to a third party to use your IP, but you continue to own it. There are plenty of risks to watch out for when entering a collaboration. What do you need to bear in mind? With our ultimate 15-point checklist, we ensure you're all covered. Are non-disclosure agreements in place? Have we safeguarded our ownership rights in contractual agreements with contractors, consultants, licensees, and other partners? Do we know what all our background IP is and who else's might be needed? How do we capture know-how and other confidential information generated during the project that might not be registrable? Have we got due diligence procedures in place? And 10 more you must read in our business guide, Partnering for Commercial Advantage.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And Mahendran, back to you. Thank you.
Ruben, Thank you so much. Thank you for that sharing and very insightful about intangible assets and tangible assets, and also with your video. I think our audience would have got a very good idea of what IPOS International is all about, and I'm sure they'll be reaching out to you and to all of our attendees today. So you've heard from Ruben, and there's two more speakers coming up next. So start posting your questions on the Q&A tab below. Don't be shy. I'll read them out at the end of the presentations, and we can have a discussions about that. So next in our lineup, we have Ms. Lucille Ong, Senior Associate of Marks & Clark, Singapore. Lucille joined Marks & Clark as a Singapore patent attorney in 2007 and qualified as a UK patent attorney in 2012. She has a master's degree in mechanical engineering from NUS, and Lucille also has domain expertise in additive manufacturing, biomedical devices, security devices, and systems manufacturing and production. Her practice includes drafting and prosecuting patent applications internationally and locally, and providing advice on patentability and opinions on infringement and validity. With such an in-depth experience in AM patenting, Lucille, I think, is best suited today to give us an overview of case studies in the spare parts industry. So let's wait no further and welcome Lucille. Lucille, over to you.
Thank you, Mahendran, for your very kind introduction. And also thank you to NAMIC for inviting me to present at this webinar. So let me share my screen, then you can see the slides that I will be presenting. Okay, yes. So today I'm going to be talking about patent claims and infringement, because I understand that patents can be a bit, daunting when somebody comes flashing a patent to you and say, oh, we have a patent. And so are you necessarily infringing? And you will need to know, what do you mean by infringement as well? And then I'll have some, share with you some case studies in the spare parts industry, because yeah, it's not all very clear cut, so you will see as we go along. So yes, I will be, giving a short introduction on Marks & Clark, then explain what patent claims are, how you could possibly be infringing or not infringing, some insight on design rights and copyright, although I had not mentioned this in the title, right? But yeah, it's important to talk a little bit about this for the spare parts industry, and then some case studies. So just a quick intro to the Marks & Clark Group. We were founded in 1887, so it's really quite old, by two engineers. So Marx is George Marx and Dougal Clark. And Dougal Clark actually invented the two-stroke engine, and he got a patent for it, which I thought was quite cool. So we have many locations, like in 7 countries, or 8 if you include Hong Kong separately, and a lot of IP staff, 230 actually. Okay, so these are some of our strengths, right? We were established in 95 when the Singapore Patents Act came into force. So kind of like we've been growing along together with the Singapore patent scene. And we have a huge, okay, I won't say huge, we have the largest and most diverse pool of patent professionals all with technical backgrounds and properly qualified to prosecute and take care of your patents and other IP needs. And we are qualified not just in Singapore, many of us also in other countries like UK and Europe and Australia. And we don't just, of course, file in Singapore, we can file in Southeast Asia, and of course, internationally in all the other big markets like US, Europe, China, Africa, anywhere in the world, we can take care of that for you. And you have seen in the video that we are definitely consistently ranked as a top tier firm. So let's jump into patent claims. So here you have some examples of front pages of patents. So this is Europe, China, which will be in Chinese, of course, and then the US patent. And inside, you will find that there will be these different sections, and the description will be the huge bulk of it, and possibly a lot of figures as well. And sometimes people say, oh, look, they have a patent on this, and wow, it describes, the thing that we want to do, and it looks like we are going to infringe, but wait a minute, right? The most important thing here you need to look at are the claims. So if a patent is like a movie, then your claims is actually the hero, and the description and figures and everything else is the supporting cast. You have to look at the claims to know whether or not you're in danger of infringing, or whether if you have a patent, whether people are infringing your patent. Okay, so claims. The independent claim defines the scope of the invention. Scope of the invention means, or the scope of patent protection as well, right? You're saying, this belongs to me, and if you want to copy this, you need to get my permission. And it lists the essential features of what is this that belongs to me. So for example, just give you a simple example of what a patent claim could look like. So this is a claim for a polishing tool. So right, it has a rubber pad. This is a rubber pad provided with a number of channels, corresponding number of stiffeners receivable in the channels. So these will be the little white sticks. I suppose they are made of metal. Yes, it's been a while, so I can remember, yes. And increase in length of stiffness in the channels, increase stiffness and decreases compliance of the rubber pad. So the stiffeners can move in and out of the rubber pad to make it either stiffer, to make the rubber pad more compliant so that it is, softer when you do the polishing, or to make it stiffer so that it will take away more material when you spin this, this part of the polishing tool. So this patent had 1 page of background, 16 pages of description, 23 pages of figures, but only 2 independent claims. So this one is the first independent claim, polishing tool. And then the second independent claim, because you can have more than 1 independent claim, was a rubber pad for a polishing tool. So we're just claiming the rubber pad without the stiffeners. But the rubber pad must have the number of channels, and then the stiffeners can go inside. So the patent owner basically is saying that I am protecting the tool that has this polishing rubber pad with stiffness, and I'm also protecting just the rubber pad. So if anybody is going to be just selling the rubber pad, because that is, like the replaceable part, then they are also going to be infringing my patent, because my patent specifically protects a rubber pad, which has been claimed here. So patents also have dependent claims, because they have a whole list of claims. So sometimes people look at them and say, oh, are we infringing this one, this one, this one, this one? Don't worry about the dependent claims. It's the independent claims that define the scope. Dependent claims are just to overcome prior art, and the features add on to the independent claims. So claim 2, right? Polishing tool of claim 1, wherein then you have extra features. So the rubber pad is provided at one end of the shaft, attached to spindle, and the stiffeners attached to the stiffener carrier. So there were subsequently quite many more dependent claims, but we don't have to worry about those when you are considering whether you infringe this patent or not. Okay, infringement. So now you know how the claims are structured, right? You have independent claims. That's the most important. They list the individual features. So how do you know if you infringe? So check your product. Is every feature in the independent claim inside your product? So in this case, maybe you are the competition. If you are the competition and somebody else has a patent, then you need to check your product against their patent's independent claim. Additional features in your product are not relevant, right? And I'll explain this using the illustration going in the next slide. Okay, say the patent claim has feature A, B, C, right? Just now you have the rubber pad, the stiffener, and the stiffener can move in the rubber pad. So if you, as the competition, have all these 3 things, then you will be infringing the claim 1. If you, as a competition, you have these 3 things, and you also have an actuator to move the stiffener in and out, and you also have some force feedback to control the thing, doesn't matter. So long as you have what is in the claim 1, it's all inside your product, you still infringe the claim 1. But what if you manage to not have something that was in the claim 1? For example, maybe your polishing tool, the rubber pad and the stiffener is fixed. You cannot move the stiffener in and out of the rubber pad. In that case, you could be considered I would say that you would not infringe claim 1, because in the claim 1, the stiffener must be able to move in and out so that it can change the compliance of the rubber pad. So you have to see that, is this whole claim 1 inside your product or not? So that is where it comes in. And interestingly, if claim 1 has features that you don't have in your product, then you will not infringe. For example, sometimes the claim 1, they may not have so few features. They may have quite a few features, right? And you manage to make your product to eliminate some of those features, like you don't have to have them, then in that case, you would not infringe. Okay, just to summarize on this, right? If you are a patent owner, to catch infringers, you want your claim 1 to have as few features as possible. so that it's harder for them to drop off features that are unessential. And if you're trying to avoid infringement of somebody's patent, you have to see whether can you leave out something that is in their claim? Can you change one of the features or more of the features so that it's not exactly what is being claimed, so that you can be considered not within the scope of the claim? Okay, I understand some of this might be like going very fast, but don't worry, you can please feel free to contact me. We can always discuss this. If you have any concerns about any patents that you are, have been shown and or you have come across and you're concerned about your product, come and ask me about it, no worries. Okay, and of course, you have to know whether are you doing any infringing acts, right? Just because you came up with a design that is within the scope of somebody's patent doesn't mean you immediately infringe. Right? For a product, you have to be making the product, selling it, offering for sale, using, importing, or keeping it commercially, right? You got to make it commercially. If somebody is doing it for their own private, non-commercial purpose, or just for experiment, maybe they make the same product so that they can do more further refinement in the lab to see whether they can make a better one, that doesn't mean that you're infringing. So that will not count as infringement. And if the patent claim is for a process, they say a method to make something, and the method is you got to do step 1, step 2, step 3. So if you are using that exact same method, step 1, 2, 3, then you'll be infringing. Or you offer to, to use this method for somebody else, or you are actually making the product that comes out of this process using exactly this process, then of course you would, or actually even just selling a product that's made by the process, you could be infringing. Importantly, right, patents are very territorial, and you have to be doing these infringing acts in the country where the patent is filed. If the patent is filed in some place that you are not, where you are not commercializing, then you can freely commercialize where there is no patent protection for that same product. Okay. There's a very interesting exemption for vessels that actually applies in most countries, like 177 of them who signed the Paris Convention. It says that, countries who are part of this, any so-called infringing acts will not be considered infringement if it is on a vessel, like a ship, right? Where the vessel is temporarily or accidentally in the waters where the patent is. So let's say I have only a Singapore patent, and this ship is of Malaysia, and the patent is protecting something about this ship, and the Malaysia ship has this, but it comes to the Singapore water, it will not be considered infringing even though it's in the territory where the patent is, because it's considered temporarily in the waters only. So for the marine industry, this is quite interesting. So it can be quite difficult to catch potential infringers if, it can be very costly to file patents in every single country where you think that the ships might be temporarily at, and even if they're temporarily there, then it's not considered infringement. So yeah. In summary, right, just on patent claims and infringement, remember the claim 1 defines the invention and the scope of protection. And if you're going to infringe, then every single bit of that's in the claim must be in the product. Yes, and that will be subject to the national law. Okay, design rights cover the visible appearance, not the function. Patents protect the function, but design rights cover the appearance. And they will not cover something that's technical. They will not cover something that must fit another product. The shape is fixed because something else has another shape, and yours must be this complementary shape to fit. So like those exhaust pipe that must go under the undercarriage of the car, there's only a fixed way it can go. So that part cannot have design right. But the very tail end of the pipe, some people you can see, wow, they change to Milo Kong type, or they have the double barrel kind. So that part can have design right because it is not a must fit. And they will not cover parts that are normally not visible because usually that will be purely functional. And interestingly, they do not cover parts that are used for repair. But this part is subject to interpretation. It's not so straightforward. Okay, when you say used for repair, you think, oh, so I'm repairing something, so I will not infringe somebody's design rights because it excluded under this design regulation. Yeah, I will go into this a little bit in the case study. Copyright is important because I understand that, in 3D printing, of course, a lot of the IP is in the data files, the instructions to the printers. So copyright protects your design files, your software, and it is automatic, right? You don't need to file for protection for copyright. But as you know, it is difficult to stop illegal downloads. This is the same problem that has been faced by the music and movie industry. All the file sharing, all the Chong version of this and that. Same problem. And I think it is similarly very, very difficult to go after individual end users because so many of them, and the music industry also face backlash, right? When you go after the individual persons, it's like coming down on the small fry. So what can you do? First of all, you need to protect your file, right? Put in all kinds of file security. I think Hakon will be talking about this quite a bit later on. And then what you can try and do better is to go after the websites that host the data, because they are more clearly doing this for a commercial reason, and you can try and get them to stop this providing of the data for download. And sometimes if it's kind of like, can't beat them, join them, then at least you provide people with a legitimate way to obtain the data from you or from your authorized distributor or somebody, so that, you know how it is, right? Usually when there's demand, there's supply. So even if there's no legal supply, there will be illegal supply. So why not you provide the legal supply? It's very much similar to the approach with the music industry. So we can learn a lot of lessons from that and apply them very similarly for your digital printing, 3D printing. So some interesting case studies here. Okay, IBC, intermediate bulk container, this is it, right? This it was an exclusive licensee, so they're allowed to sue people for patent infringement because they licensed the patent. And they are the ones who make this whole bulk container. It has the pallet, it has the cage, it has the inner container, which they call the bottle, right? So that is the patent. And there's a lot of further features that is relating to the cage. So what was happening is that they produce and supply the plastic bottle, because usually after a while, because they're storing liquids and all that, then they get corroded or exposed to sunlight, then the plastic breaks down. What they do is, the cage is still fine, so throw away the plastic bottle, then produce and supply the plastic bottle to another company that put the bottle into maybe they scrub it clean, polish it a bit, and sell them as recon IBC. So, of course, the Schutz is not very happy about this, but after 3 levels of court cases, first one said no infringement, second one said infringement, third one said no infringement, because you're just supplying the plastic bottle. The bottle is a freestanding replaceable, no connection with the inventive concept which was in the cage, not a main component. So they said that effectively it's like repairing this IBC, and you're not actually making the IBC. Because remember, right, when we said infringement, you got to be making, using, selling, offering for sale, but repairing is not an infringing act. So it boils down to, right, the question is whether replacing a part of the patented article constitutes making the whole patented thing. So in this case, they said that, no, we just replace the bottle. It's not the same as just doing that doesn't mean that I'm making a whole new IBC and therefore infringe. So therefore considered not infringing. So this case, I think many people were quite happy, right? They said that, okay, at least if I supply part of a patented product and it can be considered repairing, then at least it will not be immediately that, oh, just because I fix some part of it, then I am making and therefore I am infringing. So this is quite an important case. Then this comes to community designs. So Audi and Porsche, right, they registered designs on their car rims. Very specific is the appearance. I mean, there's nothing particularly functional, right? You can have many designs for the same function. So Acacia, they made and sold exactly the same rims. So the question is, are they infringing Porsche and Audi's registered designs? So it turned out that it is not an infringement when the replica rims are used to replace damaged rims. Because remember, there was this exclusion, right, about the registered design rights, that if you are using it for repair, then it doesn't come under design rights. So no design rights if you are repairing only. So what does this mean? It means that you can repair, but upgrading is not the same as repairing, right? So let's say you buy a Skoda car and it comes with stock rims that are 16-inch. Then you like the Audi rim very much, but you don't want to pay the Audi price. So you bought the Acacia rim, 17-inch rim to upgrade, throw away sell off your stock rims and change to your 17-inch rims. Well, that is not repairing, and that will be considered infringement. So you can see that it is kind of like, wow, how is Acacia? So Acacia had to, they were kind of like warned to say that, yes, you can make, but you must make sure that when you sell to people, they're only using it to repair, not just to upgrade or make their car nice or zeng their car. No, that would not be considered repair because there was nothing wrong with it. Then you're not repairing. If you're not repairing, then you will be infringing because they have a registered design. Over in the US, Ford had design rights for the F-50 truck, this massive thing, for the hood and for the headlights. And the Automotive Body Parts Association, they have such a thing in the US, wanted people to be allowed to import exactly the same kind of hood and headlights to repair the trucks. So like over on the EU side, right, they said repair is okay. But in the US, sorry, repair still not okay. Because the judge said, you don't have to put exactly the same design headlight and hood, right? You can make another shape or some other small changes inside there that will not be exactly the same as the design patterns or the design rights in the US, and it will work. So sorry, too bad. If you bring in exactly the same, then you are infringing. So you can see that the law is not the same internationally. So yeah, please consult and get your IP professional to check for you because it is not going to be the same everywhere. So this one is about a ferry. Now this is about the temporary movement of, ships. So this ferry, this exact one called the Jonathan Swift is always going between Ireland and England, and cars will drive on, park inside, and you move over to the other country, then it can drive off again. So Stena had a patent protecting the hull of a ferry, of a vessel. And this ferry is registered in the UK. And then you'll stay there for 3 hours and then come back, and 3 hours and then come back. Okay. So they said that the patent was valid. It was found valid by the court. And the ferry indeed had all the components of the main claim. But it's not considered infringement because it fell under the exemption that when it was there, it was only there temporarily. So even if they go 10 times a day or each time stay very, very long, but the Court of Appeal, right, said the frequency doesn't matter. So long as it's considered temporary, then it falls under the exemption. So even though it's exactly covered by the claim 1 of your UK patent, because it's an Irish ferry, only temporarily in the UK water, then not infringing. So they can continue to keep moving up and down. Okay. So conclusion, right? Please, if in doubt or anything, check whether there's existing patents or designs in the relevant countries that you're considering to be marketing in. And also check whether your activities are counting as infringing acts. Okay, we can say, yes, we're repairing, but to what extent are you repairing? Are you repairing to the extent that you're actually kind of like making the whole thing already like 80% is new and, so that is that question of degree and quality and quantity that has to be decided. So the devil is really in the details because the law is there, but to apply it, you need to go into each case exactly. And of course, this temporary presence in the water, are they there? Of course, if you can, don't copy exactly the same, right? You don't have to, especially now in 3D printing, if you can modify your thing, then please, certain parts, don't make it exactly the same. Apply some creativity, make it not identical, then at least try not to, copy other people's things exactly. Protect your files, of course. This one is, yeah. Okay, and then, yes, if you have any alarm bell, any question, please just consult first because you don't want to get yourself into a whole business endeavor and then find that you got some terrible IP situation where you are now stuck and you need a license, but then people are not going to give it to you or you're infringing and, yeah, so please. Okay. Yeah, I've come to the end of my part. Sorry, I think I have overrun a bit. Thank you. This is my contact, and I will hand back to you, Mahendran. Okay, I'll stop this screen share here.
Will do. Thanks, Lucille. So a nice takeaway there. So don't copy. If you need to, just innovate. Don't copy exact and then get into trouble. Be on the right side of the law. And again, like what Lucille just said, don't get into trouble. Yeah. So make sure you consult IP lawyer and legal teams before you go into a product innovation. So our third speaker is ready to take the stage and introducing Mr. Hakon Elkia, Head of Venture in 3D Printing from Wilhelmsen Ship Service. Hakon is a shipping and previous management consulting professional with a strong track record from transformation projects and digital ventures. He is passionate about innovation and transformation and developing and bringing innovative products and solutions and services to the maritime industry. As a head of venture in 3D printing, he is fulfilling the vision to disrupt supply chain for marine parts by working to eliminate all expenses and time constraints associated with traditional supply chain and production. So let's welcome Hakon.
Thank you so much, Mahendran, and thank you so much for having me. And I will also say a big thank you to NAMIC being key in driving the adoption of additive manufacturing in Singapore. It seems like I'm probably sitting in Norway, in my home country, with this fleece on. It's actually sitting in the office, and with few people sitting in the office, it's less body heat to spread in a way. I'll share my screen. Perfect. My name is Hakon. As Mahendra mentioned, thank you for the kind introduction. I work in Wilhelmsen. Wilhelmsen is a global and large shipping company. I work more specifically in Wilhelmsen Ship Service. Wilhelmsen Ship Service provides products and services to vessels all around the world from 2,200 ports, serving 50% of the global merchant fleet. Before going into the specific slides, I just want to share a bit of the background why Wilhelmsen entered the 3D printing field 4 years ago. And the reason being is that we saw that the technology was maturing in other industries such as automotive, aerospace, medical, aviation, etc., being a proven technology. And being in the maritime space for now 160 years old, we know that spare parts is a pain point in the maritime industry. And we asked ourselves the question, what if we were able to produce spare parts close to the point of need? Would we been able to then solve or address some of these pain points? And since then, that a lot of pilots, R&D, etc., we're now entering full commercial mode. And as you can see here, it's also another name displayed. It's ThyssenKrupp. ThyssenKrupp is a 200-year-old company in the materials and steel business, spent more than a decade in additive manufacturing, produce critical spare parts for submarines, so they know what they're doing. And we are now joining forces, establishing a 3D printing joint venture, which is going to accelerate and drive the adoption of on-demand manufacturing in the maritime space. In a way, building a stronger and more resilient supply chain for maritime spare parts, which has proved to be even more important during these times of COVID, when productions and factories are closing down or operating with less capacity, etc. Good. I wanted to start off a bit with the value proposition. We now heard from excellent IP experts. We are dealing with IP every day as a user of the technology and also as a designer of parts. So I want to take that perspective today. In terms of the value proposition, the 3D printing venture is addressing pain points with spare parts for stakeholders on both ends of the traditional value chain. Both from an end user point of view, which is the shipping companies, but also from a spare part manufacturing, from an OEM point of view, the original equipment manufacturers. And if you look from an end user point of view, shipping companies are dealing with obsolete parts. 50% of the global merchant fleet is about 15 years of age. There are several OEMs that doesn't exist anymore, then they cannot find the parts in the market, sub-components not available, etc. They're dealing with parts with poor part performance. You see a rubber impeller here, frequent failure due to part deteriorating. And obsolete part example is a gear rail not available in the market for a gantry crane on board a bulk carrier, vessel that is above 20 years of age. You're dealing with, in some cases, long lead time spare parts and not able to get the part in time. It can be that the part is made to order or that you need the part in an area where customs clearance takes too much time. For instance, getting a part into Brazil can take 2 weeks, West Africa, quite challenging, etc. But we are also working with OEMs, and this is very important from an IP point of view. We're not the new gray market for spare parts, but we are partnering up with the OEMs and helping the OEMs, both in terms of onboarding them to a digital supply chain, but also offering on-demand manufacturing capabilities for them worldwide in a quality assured manner. And from an OEM point of view, of course, they're interested in many of the same pain points as the end user. They're looking at 3D printing to improve the performance of the part. It might be reduce corrosion resistance, increase durability of the part by redesigning the part, giving it more strength, going from assembly to a single part, etc. Being able to provide their customers a better service to then bring down the lead time of certain spare parts, especially with regards to rush hours, but also in terms of high working capital, as many OEMs are keeping large inventories of spare parts centrally and air freighting parts to all corners of the world. And also low volume parts. As you know, 3D printing has a fixed cost per part, whereas in traditional manufacturing, we have the economies of scale where the cost per price drops as volume increases. And in many cases, 3D printing is a very much competitive alternative for the low volume parts. Parts that are out of scope are parts that are easily available, import to an affordable price, typically out of scope. And also parts that we get requested where we will infringe any IP rights without the involvement of OEM. And we take a quite clear standing that we don't do those parts. The solution that we have in place together with ThyssenKrupp is a platform. We are managing an ecosystem of production partners. So here in Singapore, we're working with 10 to 15 different production partners with various technologies, different polymer technologies, metal printing technologies, to rapid casting, to vacuum casting, to machining, etc. It's on-demand manufacturing, producing parts on demand, both efficiently and effectively. So our platform is managing these manufacturing partners. So before Christmas, we delivered a lifting tool from Wärtsilä. And if you are ordering this lifting tool in Singapore or in Busan or in Brazil, you need to know that you're getting the same quality part. Hence, through our ecosystem and our platform, we're making sure that all our partners are having the necessary capabilities and certificates in place to be a partner, but also in terms of assuring our platform, but also our parts that we are delivering. So that's the whole business model, being the spider in the web and managing a large ecosystem. Benefits, I mentioned many of them. Probably reiterate one or emphasize one element, which is reducing environmental footprint. Instead of shipping and storing parts worldwide, we're moving towards a digital supply chain where you are sending a digital file to the printing location. So the carbon footprint is significantly less compared to traditional manufacturing. The production process, as many of us know in the additive manufacturing field, has much less waste compared to traditional manufacturing. What is a big focus area on our end, especially working with OEMs and the design files of the OEMs, is that we spend a lot of time and investing a lot into protecting our platform, making sure that our platform is a secure digital environment and that design data is protected by best-in-class companies. In addition, our platform is endorsed by CLOTS, DNVGL, making sure that we are complying to the necessary standards, and also that all parts are rigorously inspected prior to being shipped out from our service locations. DNVGL is a close partner of us, both in terms of, as you see here, quality assuring our platform, but also in terms of the parts that we're delivering. We launched several commercial programs. We have more than 3,000 vessels in scope currently. You see some of the customer names here. Past month, 5 more customers have joined, so I'm looking forward to share more names on that. On the right-hand side, you see the joint venture announcement with ThyssenKrupp in the midst of setting up the company. So looking forward to sharing the new company name instead of calling it NewCo and JVCo, etc. This is the process of bringing physical parts to a digital supply chain. I will show more in the end how we're working on the IP side. Customer OEM price information for fabrication. We do assessment of parts, digitize the part, choose the fabrication approach. In this case, one of our production partners, AML3D, operating in Singapore and Australia, doing large-scale metal printing, and then estimated lead time and cost. I forgot one. We do a classification society advisory on the part, together with DNVGL and a necessary risk analysis before estimating lead time and cost. So quite a thorough process, but we're also quite efficient and effective on this. Here is a use case of an OEM part. It's a 3D printed and CE certified lifting tool. What is quite interesting with this part is that a lead time is reduced from several months to a couple of weeks. Production cost is reduced significantly. It's also easier, lighter, and safer to use on board. Part weight is reduced from 9 kilos to around 2 kilos because of like material conversion. And also all the part is interchangeable, meaning that all parts can be changed. And because we can, we deliver the part with a drone here in Singapore, supporting the value proposition of on-demand manufacturing, which is all about providing a service which is faster, better, and greener than the traditional manufacturing. So here you see one of the part landing on one of our customers' vessels. Customer was Birch Bulk. And it took a couple of minutes for the ones familiar or known in Singapore, a couple of minutes from East Coast to the vessel. Here is our generic part. A customer was having issues with the part deteriorating, handling wastewater in a pump from a ice scrubber system with very low pH level. When you now have done a material conversion to TPU, which can then withstand difficult fluid environments. Of course, doing the necessary tests of the part. And the part is 100% customizable. So anyway, here we've done a part performance improvement. So to the last point, making sure we have some time for the panel discussion in the end as well. How are we mitigating risk of failure and management of IP? This is a quality assurance framework that we're working according to, endorsed by DNVGL. And as you can see is that from a customer point of view, either it's the end user or the OEM will provide the operating requirement for the part, and we will digitize the part, we'll do a capability match in terms of our production partner, we will inspect the part following best practices based on product criticality and value, and delivery and the feedback process, continuously improving the part. This is very high level. It's a very long document in total, but just to give you a glimpse on the way we're working. In addition, if you look at mitigating risk of failure, we are ensuring fitness of purpose in application and operating environment, and we're following industry best practices in design. And we are ensuring that our printer or production partners have matching technologies to requirements, and also final inspection and testing before delivery. Important element, as mentioned on the previous slide, the continuous improvement through actively gathering customer feedback to improve products. and partnered in the DMGL as independent check on application requirements and certification through the print passport service that the DMGL is running. From a management of intellectual property, we are working with the OEMs, not against OEMs. In a way, we're quite well covered on that area. But what is very important from our point of view is to protect that IP in the best possible way. So we're currently working with a company to make our platform digital secure, looking into actually putting the file into the printer itself without the production partner seeing the part. Currently, we are having strong NDAs with our production partners, and our production partners will only get the design files after being awarded the job. So we'll only share limited information with the production partners before they accept the job. In terms of design, when you're especially looking at generic parts, we do thorough sanity checks of possible infringement during design phase, both in terms of analyze design, fabrication company, and background before fabrication, and potential patent searches for infringement. And as mentioned, to avoid leakage, we're investing heavily into cybersecurity and secure data flows. Yeah, and the ability to directly access print machines to produce sensitive parts. If you're interested to learn more, please ask questions. We can cover those during the panel discussion, or feel free to reach out either to me or to Ken in ThyssenKrupp, head of AM on that side. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Håkon. Yes, indeed, this is the time where all the questions have been flowing, and we have a lot of questions. So I think in the interest of the time today, I think we're gonna dive straight into some of the questions. I think the first one, while Lucille, you were presenting, there was a question that had come on in relation to the case study that you talked about about the Malaysian ship. So the question goes from Simon: is presumably the thing on the Malaysian ship has to be made and sold somewhere. Then would that be infringing the patent? That's the question.
So it really depends. Let's say we only have a Singapore patent. Where is this thing being made and sold? If you only have the Singapore patent and the thing is being made and sold in Thailand and then put on a Malaysian ship and the Malaysian, so there will not be infringement, because if they don't have patent in Thailand, then making in Thailand would not infringe the Singapore patent. So they must be doing all those infringing acts in the country where the patent is obtained. Yeah.
Okay, so it depends on the country. So I mean, okay, so staying on that, right, with you. So there's a question from Joachim. So would you able to clarify if the infringement you've talked about relates to the right to use or the possibility to patent?
Yes, this is quite interesting, because sometimes people confuse infringement with getting a patent, right? Infringement is always talking about whether you have the right to use somebody's patent, because infringement is talking about, are you infringing their claim? Now, it's entirely possible to infringe somebody's patent and still be able to patent your own product, because your product may has something inventive and new over something that's already patented, which I suppose is, in many cases, that's the situation as technology evolves. So you get a patent on your new and inventive part, but you are actually still using somebody else's more basic technology. So in that case, your product, right, like we mentioned, that patent is completely within your product. So you infringe that patent, but you could still get your own patent on top of this. So in order to get your product out there in the market, you need to get a license on this, because this part doesn't belong to you. This is yours, but this belongs to other people. So you want to go out like this, you got to get a patent license on this. Then this is yours. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a question here in regards to so let's take a case of a marine power pack, since we are all talking about the marine sector. Right? So the OEM is still present, but however isn't willing to be part of the digitalization process. So in this case, if a third party proceeds to digitalize one of the components without the blessings from the OEM, now what are the possible means for end users to advance this as a business case?
It really depends though. If you're digitalizing a component, basically you're 3D printing this component as part of a bigger thing. It's possible that this component itself may have patent protection. Like just now I talked about the IBC, right? The plastic bottle part did not have patent protection. So fine, you can make and then just put into the cage. But if this component that you're making has its own patent covering it, then I'm sorry, if you're going to be, doing those so-called infringing acts in the country where the patent is, then you will still infringe. But if the component itself does not have any patent protection, then you're making it and then using it to repair a bigger thing, then there is no question that you're infringing something because it has itself no patent protection. But if the bigger thing is patent protected, then like you're saying, right, by replacing this part, are you considered making this big thing again, or it's very clearly just a repair, to replace a worn-out thing? Then if it's clearly a repair, then it's much less likely that you will be infringing. So to prevent this, well, if you can, again, try to make it slightly different, that it's not exactly the same, and be very careful that, they don't actually have patent protection for that component itself. Because it's entirely possible that a component, it may be small, but it could have packed a lot of technology inside it, and it could have patent protection.
So in reference to the Schutz versus the Verit case, right? So would this be a case of no for IP infringement?
Yeah, the Schutz and Verit was the one about the bottle in the cage, right? Yeah. So the bottle had no IP protection for itself. It was, in itself, it's not patented. It was part of that whole thing. Yeah, then the judge said, well, just replacing the bottle in and out. So in that case, no. But if you are just doing that, fine, for sure, I can say yes, no infringing. But when you're talking about component of the marine power pack, then you really got to look at the detail. I cannot just say, oh yes, for sure, you are not infringing, or sure, you will infringe. You have to look at the details of every situation.
So how can you prevent this from happening?
Yeah, by being sure that, first of all, that you've done your search, then comparing, and then make sure that your activities are in areas where the pattern is not there already, or but the point is that you need to do some homework before you just wholesale say that, oh, they don't want to, go into 3D printing, then never mind, we do. It's not so straightforward, right? Yeah, just make sure you check properly first before you do.
Okay, all right, thanks, Lucille. Hakan, there's a question for you. In the case of a liability transfer, is there any market practice or how would this be commercially arranged? In the case of a part failure, who would be liable? Would it be the OEM or service bureau or end user or vessel management company or even the insurance company? What's your take on that?
It is a very good question and quite relevant. That's the role we're taking today as being the orchestrator of multiple production partners. We take the warranty and liability responsibility. In many cases, working with the local service provider, they seldom take the warranty and liability responsibility on their end. And especially in the maritime space, it's a quite important point. With regards to the OEMs, it will be case by case with the OEMs in terms of who takes the warranty, liability, etc. We are able to do it on behalf of the OEM as well. But that's the biggest value with our service, is that we provide this central quality assurance piece that you don't get interacting independently with a given service provider.
Okay, thanks. Ruben, a couple of quick fire questions to you. Since you're a little bit quiet out there, I'm pulling out some questions that have been sent your way here. So if I obtain a patent protecting my product, does this mean that I am free to commercialize my product?
Well, I guess that also brings up to the earlier point that Lucille has shared earlier. At the end of the day, when you have a patent, it can be a patent over. We are all standing on the shoulders of giant right now. So every patent invention that you have could probably be leveraging on someone else's. So if you can actually get a patent granted, then technically whatever that technology, that claim that you got is yours. But as you bundle your product with a few other technology in, and there's always a chance that you could be infringing on the others, and that's where you may need to seek help from Lucille and her colleagues, who can help you perform certain kind of freedom to operate kind of checks, so that they can help you assess to see whether, while you have your patent, but there's a holistic product and solution offering, are you infringing on the others as well?
Okay. What about trademarks? Can 3D printed parts be in danger of trademark infringement?
Absolutely, because a lot boils down to, as I mentioned earlier, every creation that you have all manifests into a certain form of intangible asset or IP in this case. So it could take the form of a trademark. It could take the form of. So, for example, when it comes to the Coke bottle, it has even taken the form of a trademark in this case, which then it means that it can be renewed, because for those who know trademark, it can be renewed forever, so long you pay renewal fees. So I think in that respect, then it becomes like a permanent ownership. So I think in that sense, whenever you're printing something, you got to see what exactly you're printing. Is there a trademark within and encapsulate within the design itself? So it may not be that design pattern that you infringe, but it could be a trademark, and really boils down to what exactly you are doing.
Okay. So question here, since we're on the topic of designs, so here the design remains the same. So does changing the original material of a part count as infringement?
So again, I think all this boils back to which IA or which IP are we talking about? So if that material itself is a patented material and you are using another material, or rather you're making changes to it. And so I guess Lucio's presentation has very well defined and covered that part. It all comes back to the claims. So in this case, you're talking about a patent infringement. But if you're talking about design patent infringement, then you're looking at the overall design itself. So if I tie that back to our first sharing, it all boils down to really knowing what are the intangibles and what are the IPs that you have, or those that you may infringe.
Okay. Hakon, you're in the sort of like the service bureau business. So here's a question that is really wanting to find out about who is liable for patent infringement: the designer who sent the file for print, or the printing company who actually printed it for them?
It's a good question. I think I probably want to get the expert help here as well from Lucille. We are selling the parts today. So our production partners that are in our ecosystem, we are taking the warranty and liability responsibility for the parts we are selling. So I would say that we take responsibility for that in that case. But probably Lucille has something to add on this.
Yes. So like infringement, right, is about making, selling, using, and keeping in commercial, for commercial purposes. So on the first cut, it will fall on the person who's printing it, because they're the ones who are making it. But then if somebody is doing the selling, they make already and they pass on to somebody and they sell, then the seller also could be infringing. Now, as for the designer, if the patent is for a 3D printed part, like very specifically a 3D printed part, and it needs that file, the 3D printed part to be designed and the files to be drawn up, right? Well, it could be considered contributory infringement, that you're supplying an essential component to make the part. Okay, the designer is not actually making the part, but he's providing an essential thing to make the part. And if he knows that making the part is going to be infringement and you still provide, then you could be liable for secondary infringement. Singapore doesn't have secondary infringement, but quite many other countries have, like UK. If you're providing an essential component to somebody who's going to make that infringing thing, and you know that they are going to infringe, and you still supply, so I mean, you're in cahoots clearly, right? Then you can be liable for infringement as well.
Okay. I mean, so you were talking about infringement laws. You were giving examples about what happens in the US, what happens in Singapore might differ for pretty much the same kind of scenarios. So here's an interesting question that has been asked. The 3D printer is on board a vessel that is moving around and is used to print parts. And does it mean generally that it would not infringe any patents or rights?
Okay, this one no case law, right? But I can imagine. Okay, the ship has to be registered somewhere. Yeah. So if there's no patent in that country registered, okay, fine. Maybe you may not infringe there, but the printing on the ship may not be infringing because But after that, when the product goes somewhere, it has to be sold, it has to touch land eventually, unless you're doing some kind of like water to water transfer, like you don't ever touch land.
For the ship,
kind of
yeah.
thing. Yeah, I don't know how that will go actually. Then that will go into those maritime laws already,
Yeah.
Yeah, because the scenario is evolving, and I personally don't know of anybody who's doing it, but it's a little bit like the casinos, right? When they go out there to try and avoid the countries that they don't allow gambling, so they put the ship out there in international water, then they can open a casino for it. So yeah, in this case, yes, temporary presence, yes, same thing. You will not be infringing if the ship comes here temporarily. There's a patent in this country, but the ship is not registered in this country. So I come here, then I go away. It's just temporary presence. Then yeah, I would say that then they don't infringe at that point when they are in the port. That is not their origin.
Okay, thank you. As a general question for all panelists, should I file for patents or just keep my information as trade secret or as a confidential information across the table? Maybe Ruben?
Right, thanks for that. It's really, I would suggest in general, I guess it's really boils down to what are your business objectives and then what do you really want to get out of certain things, because I would like to emphasize again that all these IPs at the end of the day, they are an instrument to help you in your business. It has to fall back to your business. So whether is it going to be a trade secret, whether it's going to be a patent, you got to review your business plan and ask yourself whether is it going to be better off as a patent or is it going to be better off as a trade secret. And of course, there are some technicalities behind whether what are the impact of having a patent, what are the impact of having a trade secret. And as I mentioned, so you may have filed a patent, but if you cannot trace it, you cannot find it being infringed, then maybe it's not better off. But sometimes a patent can actually be used as a business tool because you want to signal as a startup, you want to signal to your funders to say, look, I have something that's proprietary to my technology. And therefore it adds a certain layer of certainty to add value to your business. So then the patent become a business tool. So to really precisely answer that, it boils down to case by case, and whatever the choice you make, then is that you have to administer the right treatment to it.
Yeah, I can just add, right, that when you file a patent, it will become published 1.5 years later. So it becomes public domain. So if you don't want your technology to become available to others to know, and it's really something that is difficult for them to reverse engineer. No, if it's something very hard to reverse engineer, then keeping it as trade secret would actually be good. But if it's something that, once it's out there, everybody can see, they can copy, they can make, then you might want, then patent protection is definitely called for, because people can easily reverse engineer it. Then doesn't matter if it gets published, they know it anyway, just from the product alone.
Akon, a couple of questions here for you. It's in regards to your IP management. Have you been looking into possibilities for other technical protection measures other than encryption of files like watermarking?
Interesting. I've heard about it. I don't have the full details. I need to involve my head of platform as well. So I don't know the full details around that. But I know they've been looking into various options.
Okay, so I think the question was raised, and perhaps they can contact you to go a little bit in depth. Yeah. Compliments from Dr. Johannes. He's complimenting on your great concept of the platform. And so his question is how to manage sharing of design files on the need to access basis. Which data shall be excluded from the OEM?
Very good question. So we have a platform where we are putting out print jobs. Let's say we're getting an order in Houston. Then we'll put out the print job in Houston, and our Houston or the production partners in the area will then be able to bid on the job. And we will provide sufficient information to them to actually bid on the job without uploading the digital file. And once the job is accepted, you will then get access to the digital file. And of course, there are strong NDAs with these partners. Next step after this is how do you protect this without actually sharing the digital file. So this is what we're doing today. Next step is then to be able to directly access the printer. So put the print file into the design file into the printer itself, without the production partner actually being able to see the design file. That's the next step. That's a journey. It's not easily done, but we are spending a lot of time in implementing it.
Right. Final question from this group for you. So how do you manage the interests of the OEMs in this case to reduce their and not to reduce their value proposition? Is it a licensing model that you are adopting in their design IP, or how about it if you are redesigning their part to improve functionality?
So the OEMs that we're working with, they will always own the design files. We will never take ownership of their design files. They will either earn money on royalty fees or us being a manufacturing partner to the OEMs. And they are already today outsourcing most of their productions to other companies. So this is not a new model for them.
Right. Okay. Question here, because NAMIC works very closely with all the IHLs. So I think there's a question here. So when I work with IHLs, they have very strict contract terms. How do I work around it or work with that? Ruben?
Hi, sure. So thanks for that. So back to that, when you're working in collaboration, it's always boils down to what do you want to get out of it. So for example, if you're working with varsities and IHLs, usually they would talk about owning the foreground IP. So whatever that is being developed later on, they would like to own it. But from a business standpoint, it doesn't necessarily mean that by not owning, it leads the end of things, because you could always negotiate for a long-term license. You could always negotiate for exclusive license, for example. And all these different kind of licensing mechanism that you adopt could also grant you similar impact and effect without really owning it. And because you don't own it, you don't have to pay. If I were to give a simple example, it could be a condominium, for example. If I rent an apartment, so I pay a monthly rental and that's it, and I can do whatever I want to do within my contract agreement. So I can host a house party, I can invite friends over, but I don't have to take care of the maintenance. I don't have to take care of certain things that's being agreed upon that's being bought by the landlord. So I think it's in that respect that at the end of the day, licensing is really an extension of how you can actually use your intangible assets to work for you.
Lucille, a question here from Joachim again. What is the likelihood that a patent law that might evolve under the global pressure of reducing the environmental footprint to favor spare part production through AM?
I'm gonna assume that you're talking about favoring spare part production through AM as opposed to traditional means of manufacture. So, well, I don't think that the patent law is going to make this kind of distinction. Personally, I don't feel that it will make this kind of distinction because unless, there's no reason that it should necessarily do so. If somebody has patented a part and the patent is still live, then they do have the rights to that IP because they developed it. And, but if they say that their part, it depends on what their patent claims, right? Of course, if their patent claims a traditional manufacturing method to make that part, then by using AM to make that part, you are not infringing their method patent. So it really depends. Sometimes they have method patents, sometimes they have product patents.
Right.
Product patents tend to be stronger because, product patent means is this product. I don't care how you make it. It's like this. You make it by AM, you make it by magic or something, you get this, you infringe. But method patents is easier to overcome because if theirs is, by forging, stamping, all this kind of thing, and then you can do it by AM, your powder metallurgical ways, or laser, then you are not infringing those steps. So then you can do it. Yeah, but I don't think that the patent law is going to say that their patent suddenly becomes not valid anymore. It would still be based on what their specific claims are and whether what you're doing would infringe on those very specific steps and features in the products.
Yes. So in the case of a secondary infringement faced by 3D printing machine makers, are there any liability transfer of risk offered by insurance or reinsurance companies? Are you aware of that?
No, I don't have the full details around that, sorry.
Okay.
Mahendra, if I can just take that question.
Sure.
I think when it comes to insurance, it's always boils down to what kind of coverage you're getting, and there'll always be a list of disclaimers there. And I think when it comes to infringement, usually when it comes to brush of law, usually that insurance usually wouldn't cover. But in this case, when it comes to mitigation of liabilities, then that is where you really look into the kind of contracts that you have, because one of the questions that was raised earlier
was really if someone I'm a printer, someone gave me something infringing and I print it, am I liable as well? So I guess, and that is also where it boils back to kind of agreement that you have with that party that you're engaging. And usually with all this, I would also recommend that people actually work out a certain mitigation clauses. So that I would say that if I were to buy your design, and I would then emphasize that your design has to be to your best knowledge, your design is not infringing on anyone else. But if it does, then my risk will be my risk will then be passed on to you. So while such clauses are usually quite common to be input, but it does put both parties on the alert, make sure that they do their due diligence when they're going through such transactions.
Okay, I think thanks, Ruben. So we're almost coming to the end of our session, and actually we have overrun by a few minutes. So just as a final word for our audience attendees here today, I mean, from your perspective, just one final takeaway. What would you want to impart to them in terms of filing for IPs or looking out for infringement, and also from Hakon's your point of view? Maybe we'll just start with Lucille.
Well, I would say check. Okay, don't take anything for granted. There's no harm checking. You can Google, and of course you can come to me. First consultation is free, so no worries. You just come to me. We can at least talk about, figure out what is the problem. Is there even a problem? And then if there is, then you can go and take it further and see whether there's anything that you need to study more carefully. But yeah, first please just do check, because you cannot assume that there is no IP in something and you can just do. Of course, if you're just printing this for fun, a nice one that you just keep yourself at home because you like it very much, then that's not an issue, because you're not selling it, you're not trading it, and nobody's going to come after you for doing something like that. But yeah, if you're doing it for the purpose of trade, even you just print one piece and it has a registered design on it, and you're printing it to sell for somebody, then yes, you could be infringing. Yeah. So yes, please just be careful and check, and yeah, play it safe. It is better than we have.
Right. Wise words there, Lucille. Thanks. Ruben, yours for the audience, please.
Sure. I noticed that this whole conversation has always been a lot about what if I'm infringing on someone, but then the reverse can be true that someone actually infringing on you as well. Mm-hmm. So I guess it all boils down to, at the end of the day, really know what are the things that you have, what are your assets, and what are you bringing to the table, and then whenever you and you cannot be careful of things that you can't see. Yeah. So I would suggest be mindful of. Realize what are your own intangible assets. Realize in every relationship and transaction that you go into, whether it's a collaboration, a JV, a distribution, a franchise, or even a licensing or manufacturing agreement, know what you bring to the table, and be mindful of how these assets can actually help you. And as well as be mindful of the risks that you may get yourself into. Thanks,
Ruben. Hakon?
Yeah, I think I will follow up what Lucille said, is that don't take any shortcuts. Do the necessary checks, etc. Although the customer is eager for you to do the part, it might be of high risk if you're not doing the proper checks. So that's probably my final words.
Thank you, Hakon. Okay, so if everybody could hear us or see us, I would say a big round of applause to all three of you. I think everyone is clapping in there, right in front of the computers. Yay, well done, good job. Lucille, Ruben, and Hakon, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. And I think this has been super informative, and I believe you have gained a lot of fans and supporters in what you've been advocating. I think you have been three great advocates for IP and how we can stay out of infringing and trademarks and copyrights. So that's all really great today. So thank you so much. And so for rest of you out there who have joined us and stayed all the way till the end, thank you very much. And we have indeed come to the end of our session. And you may drop us a note at info@namic.sg and or at marketing.namic.sg, and check out our events page for future events that we will be bringing to you live under the NAMIC webinar series. So hope to see you soon. Take care and have a good week ahead. Thank you very much.